as we begin, we just want to stop and take a moment and reflect on the panel that we just came from, which was powerful in its own way, and asked all of us to dig to a deep place, which I believe we did as panelists as well as attendees. So we'll just take a few moments to sit and reflect on that before we begin our next conversation. I believe the two are certainly aligned.
Thank you so much, Heather. This has been a fantastic morning, and there is a joy rising in my heart. You know, I wanted to hug Jane and Christiana, right? I wish we were in the same room. And that's how I these days like to give my talks, where before COVID hit, that when we talk about these matters, there is profound heartbreak and there is profound joy in coming together. So in our session, I'll go first, and Heather, you'll follow me, and then Dekila will join us for discussion. But yeah, it's I'm so grateful that Jane and Christiana already covered so much of the ground, and we will say it in our way. I come to our audience not from India. I'm in the US right now, but I'm Indian. I live in Boulder, Colorado. I have spent 3 months recovering from COVID. And even 2 weeks ago, I didn't have my lung power back. And I'm so glad to be doing this. So yeah, shall we dive into the conversation, or there's something bubbling up for you, Heather, that you'd like to share before I start?
You know, I think we should jump right in. It is just the moment is so full. I think it's important for us to let's keep this going.
Let's do this. Let's do this. So I have entitled my talk, Islands of Sanity in the Sea of Chaos, and it will become clearer as I go why I chose that title. The first thing I want to start with, and Jane referred to this, right? I think to make any changes, to build the movement we need to build, I like to say we need to compost our trauma. What do I mean by that? I'll just give these numbers from North America. Yeah? 1 in 3 people in the US who are adults now have witnessed domestic violence. 1 in 4 have had alcoholic relatives. I'm sorry if anyone feels that they are becoming a statistic here, but I'm trying to point to is the scale of trauma that we are sitting on top of as we try to build a climate and racial justice movement. 1 in 4 have been beaten to the point that they have marks on their bodies. And 1 in 5 have been sexually molested as a child. We don't realize it, but we are either traumatized ourselves or we are dealing with people who are traumatized. Yeah? And on top of it, there is enormous amount of racial trauma, gender violence related trauma for women and non-binary people. There is class-based trauma. The trauma, we haven't talked about it in this panel so far. People, 50% of working population in US might not have jobs right now, even if economy has started to open up. And on top of it, on top of all of these layers of trauma, we have climate trauma. I realize that the bottom of my slides are probably a few words are getting cut up, so please bear with me. it won't happen in too many slides. The point that I want to make here is that all of us are needed. You and me, all of you listening. None of us get to say someone else will do this for us, right? Because there is no group of non-traumatized people outside of us and our friends that can lead us. We are either traumatized or we are dealing with people who are traumatized. Yeah. So with that framing, I will jump on to science. And just before I go there, inviting you to take a deep breath, because we've been saying this. It's hard to really take it in. And as Jane Fonda was saying in the previous session, we have to allow these facts to hit our gut. So take a deep breath. Okay. When we get sick, when I got to emergency room during my COVID journey, people take an EKG of my heart, right? They want to know if heart is malfunctioning. This is what some scientists like to call the EKG of our planet. This is carbon dioxide concentration today. So 0 here on the x-axis is carbon dioxide concentration today. And it goes back 800,000 years ago. You see, human beings evolved between 100 and 200,000 years ago. So right about here. Since human beings have evolved, carbon dioxide concentration has been between 180 and 280 parts per million. And if this was a doctor looking at Earth's EKG, you can imagine what people would say. Earth is Mama Earth, profoundly sick. Okay. And the impacts I will not go into great detail of. The direct impact is that our ice caps are melting. Antarctica is not supposed to have 70 degree Fahrenheit or 21 degree Celsius temperatures. It's ugly. I ask everyone to never use the word global warming, never use the word climate change. Those are like very gentle words to describe what's really happening. This is climate crisis or climate emergency. And the indirect impact of our Earth's system being so off is that weather is on steroids. If you can see my hands right now, you know, when the Earth is cooler, the molecules are going like this. And when there is more heat in the system, everything is going like this. There's just more energy in the system. There are more powerful storms and wildfires, in addition to droughts, which are direct impact. Okay, let's take another deep breath, and I will get into some impacts that have to do with race and racism. The kids here are from Somalia, and the photograph on the top is from California Reservoir. These are two photographs from India. You can see it's mostly women who fetch water for the family. They literally walk for hours to reach a well. Can you see the men just break the line and get to the front of the well? Women, especially people of color, female-bodied people, they bear the burden of climate crisis. Here is a Dalit man. Just like in US, there is racism against Black and Latinx people. In India, we have four different castes, not castes, we have 4 different categories within the Hindu system, and Dalits, untouchables, are at the bottom of the rung. When water goes missing, people are refusing Dalits from drinking water from communal wells. So in this case, this man dug the well after his wife was refused water, but he opened his well to all. There was a very famous study on PNAS about the Syrian refugee crisis, how it was fueled by climate crisis, that years of drought between 2006 and 11 led to record drought. And one of the things that led to the Western world seeing, it makes me tear up, images of the children washing off the shores. And here in North America, where most of us speakers are currently, most of the pollution, the industrial pollution, the transport, highways for transport, they are in communities of color. I'm simply touching it, not going deep into it, but there is a large body of research on disproportionate impact on indigenous communities. This particular author page has done a lot of good research on impact on indigenous communities. And leaving the human realm out, these headlines are just heartbreaking if you understand anything about how ecology functions. When insects vanish, when bees vanish, our food production takes a hit. In our privileged world, we don't get to think about where our food comes from. And this is an image from the Gulf Gulf disaster in 2010. The top photograph here is monarch butterfly, whose migration is getting affected, among other things, by climate emergency. And the bottom is one of my most endearing creatures in the ocean, a pteropod, which is called a sea butterfly. They have a crust that is made of calcium carbonate that dissolves when carbon dioxide dissolves in water. As Stephanie and Wendy were talking in the first session today, what is our responsibility to these beings? So let's take another deep breath. And I now will go to looking at the question, is it too late? Too late. Are we doomed? Is extinction baked in? Human extinction is what I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about other species. They are going extinct as we speak. They have been going extinct for decades. Before I go into making my main point, I want to show you this little video.
Hi, this is...
I hope you can see some twirling and twisting and dance of air molecules here. This is a video produced by NASA that is showing how carbon dioxide is being emitted by Northern Hemisphere and how air currents, which are intimately related with how our ocean moves, are taking it all over the planet. Yeah? My point here is that Earth is alive. It's a unified system. And what I want to talk about next is that when people say we have crossed the tipping point, that is not true in my view, because there isn't one single tipping point. There are many, many different tipping points. This complex diagram here is showing many fundamental processes in the Earth system that are necessary for life on planet. It includes the dance of the ocean. It includes the motion of air, the atmospheric currents. It includes Amazon rainforest, which is the lung of the planet, which fixes a lot of carbon dioxide and it produces a lot of oxygen. The Earth system includes these areas that are marked in blue here, which is the frozen carbon and frozen methane, right? And each of these processes or systems or ecosystems have their own tipping points, sometimes not just one, but multiple. So we should not, it is true that we have crossed the tipping point of Arctic sea ice on the top. That Arctic sea ice is going to disappear in a few years, right? In a few years, we will not have any Arctic sea ice. If you have children and you tell them stories of Santa Pole coming from North Pole, we will not have a proverbial North Pole. That tipping point we have crossed. But see on the slide, there are many more. When we say we have crossed our tipping point, we are taking our power away from us. We have to fight for each of these tipping points. Okay, so when anyone says, is it too late? My answer is a clear and resounding no. We have crossed some tipping points. Earth's lungs and heart are hurting, but there are many other tipping points. And we must create islands of sanity to be able to take care of those tipping points which haven't been crossed. Okay. One more deep breath. I hope I'm being clear. So what do we need? What does the global community need to do in terms of science? And I know some of these points are repetition of what Diana has already said and has been brought up in the previous sessions. But let's look at it from the point of view of individual and systemic responsibility. This slide was, a similar one was showed in session where Dekila and Diane spoke as well. We've been saying that, so right now the global emissions are around 60 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. Yeah, so gigatons is billion and 1 ton is 1,000 kilograms, if you care about the units. And we've been saying that we need to reduce those emissions by half within next 10 years. Okay, that's something, that sentence has been said many times in today morning. What does this really mean? To have a chance of not causing widespread chaos, catastrophe, to stay within 2 degrees Celsius, we need to halve our emissions globally. What does it mean individually? Yeah. What collectively, what we need to do for that, in my view, is that we need to keep all the carbon in the ground, which means please don't dig out any more methane, oil, or gas. The second point is add it to the ground, which means suck the carbon dioxide out of air. Well, nature does it, trees do it. I'm not a big fan of technology myself, but for some people it is in the mix. And we need to, in the words of, I believe it was Andy I'm trying to look at the quote. Andreas Marm quoted in Manifesto for Post-Carbon Future, we need massive investment in public transport and ration public transport drastically. We have to dismantle, in Andrea's words, the violent meat industry. We have to invest in local soils and plant-based food. And in my view, all of that means that we need some version of communal village life. I know not everyone on the panel might agree with me, but I do not think personally that us continuing to live the way we currently live in cities and suburbia is conducive to a stable planet. Let's take one more breath. And this topic of who can pay for solving climate crisis was also touched upon in the previous session. We cannot be asking millennials, people in their 20s or 30s, to be paying for climate solutions, right? Even if they have all the goodwill and they are not doing othering and blaming, they are facing the scariest financial future of any generation. In terms of countries, this has also been talked about. People say China and India are making most of the emissions. So the size of the boxes here corresponds to how much emissions each country makes, right? So you can see it looks all red. Asia is the biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, right? I want to point out here that if we added up all the food waste, the emissions would be equivalent to emissions of USA. And if we looked at entire food system, including deforestation that food systems cause, that will be close to where China is. Now, going back to which country should pay for solutions or which is able to pay for solutions, I want to make 2 points. This is a cumulative emission graph. So this adds up all the emissions. If you look at where the emissions are in 2017, even though China is the biggest emitter right now, cumulatively, China's emissions are way smaller than US or Europe, right? Point number 2, this is where our personal footprints come in. You see where United States is? Every person in America is emitting at around 20 tons of carbon dioxide. That is 20,000 kilograms or 65,000 pounds of carbon dioxide every year. And for us to be collectively, globally coming to half of our footprint globally by 2030, American footprint, if we distribute this equally, has to go down to where China and India are. We need to make a drastic reduction in our personal footprints. Okay. All right. Now, in terms of global population, once again, who should pay for this? This is world population arranged by income. And you can see the poorest 50% here are only responsible for 10% of emissions. And the richest 10% are responsible for 50% of the emissions. I hope everyone can see where I'm going. This is one of the most important slides that I can share with you. So here is privileged upper middle class people like me, education privilege, living in America, being able to afford a house in Boulder, Colorado. We want everyone to come and join our march. Come, let's join the march. And then people of lower castes, people don't have economic privilege. Sometimes they are farmers, and I know so many of them from my work in India. They are farmers turned migrant agricultural workers who have been victims of climate crisis and been marching forever. It's personally heartbreaking for me that when COVID crisis hit, the upper middle class India could safely stay in their homes and get groceries delivered to their homes, just like we are doing in United States. But the migrant workers who come from poor parts of India or from villages and work in urban environments, they suddenly lost their jobs, and government shut down in a very draconian lockdown, shut down all transport. And these migrant workers, 200 million, 2/3 of North American population, people started walking to go home. That's how unjust our system is. Okay, so let's go over this one by one. I'm calling people of color, people of global majority here. It includes Black, Brown, Latinx, Chicanx, Asian people. These people have had their bodies, their cultures, their resources subjugated to create wealth in America. And most importantly, this is what I called white supremacy. I call white supremacy the mother of climate crisis, engine of climate crisis, because white supremacy has subjugated cultures that have known how to live in harmony with the living earth. White supremacy isn't about individual people being racist. White supremacy is about the system that doesn't value how people have lived in harmony with nature. People of global majority have caused least harm. They are suffering the most or will suffer the most. They have teachings that we need to face the chaos. They are often a side dish when it comes to environmental mainstream movement, although I have to say it's changing. And they have called for financial reparations. If you could remember just one line from my entire presentation, it would be this. And a Berkeley researcher, Ian Haney Lopez, has made this clear to me. The most important thing you can do to strengthen climate movement is to fight racism against Black and Brown people. That's a direct quote from him. And I'm adding racism within and outside you. Christiana also made this point that we cannot solve for climate crisis now and then come to racial healing. We all have to learn about just transition. Now, coming back to the issues that are raised around trauma, I believe it's when that we don't have ways to deal with trauma, or we can't face uncertainty, which is what gives us this fight and flight and freeze mind, right? That we become victims of white supremacy. Our fear, our trauma makes us frozen. And Jane was talking about this, right? We have to allow things to hit our body, and we have to face our own historical trauma. Unless we do that, we will not be able to put brakes into the engine of white supremacy that traumatizes all of us, white, Black, brown, all. This is the last section. Let's take a breath. Can we form islands of sanity in a sea of chaos? The model that we've been working on with friends, some locally in Boulder and all over the country, it has these 3 pillars. It has trauma-resilient individuals, right? I call them healing individuals because none of us will ever be done dealing with the trauma we individually have. So healing, not done, not healed. Number 2 is communal village life. We have to share a lot more. Yeah, we have to share a lot more to lower our footprints. And number 3 is collective resistance that Jane and Christiana were talking about, the civil disobedience. And the way we do this, my proposal is that we need to do this with a sense of belonging, with friends. We need to form these pods, these small sharing circles, which meet regularly. They have their somatic practices where we sing and move and attune to each other, where we are comfortable sharing in detail our feelings about money, race, religion, and gender. We have to be vulnerable. And then next, we prepare for strategic actions like the ones Jane was talking about. And it is very crucial. We can't just do it with our heads and hearts alone. We have to have structures for doing grief work that Stephanie and Wendy were talking about. We have to have systems for decision making and information flow. I cannot tell you how many groups fail because they just don't have a structure on how they will take decisions in a way that is feminine and honoring of everyone. And we have to learn to restore conflict. Activists burn out because they don't know how to deal with trauma and conflict. And of course, we have to have agreements on how we will deal with money. If we are not going to do it the patriarchal way, where only one person decides where things go, you need feminine structures to do it right. We can't have no rules. This is my last slide. I will not go into details, but I am part of founding this network called Yet to Be Named Network for Racial Justice and Climate Justice, which is based on the principles I described in my previous slide. Thank you so much for listening, and I'm gonna pass it now to Heather, ending with this slide, which gives you a website where a lot of resources related to the content I have presented today is there.
Thank you for a just wealth of information, and let us just take a moment to breathe in a lot of the information we just received. This is an important time to have this conversation, and I'm glad to be a part of it and to be here with you all as we really try to dig deep and uncover what are some next steps that we need to talk about and to do. So I'm going to now try to share my screen. Let's see if I can make this work here. Let's see. Here we go. So I'm going to talk today about equity and justice and allies as we're talking about the climate crisis and what we're in the midst of in our country. I titled this For Such a Time as This because I think it's important for us to understand how pivotal a moment we're in. And I'll bring it full circle as we get closer to the end. If you're just joining us, I'm Heather McTeer Toney. I'm the National Field Director for Moms Clean Air Force and a longtime climate and environmental justice advocate. I served as mayor in a community, a predominantly African-American community in the South in Mississippi, as well as work with EPA. But my favorite and I think most fun position is being mom to two beautiful children at home and one who is away from home now, and to see them growing up and then to know I'm responsible for protecting their future. this is a time like none other, I think, that we've ever seen before in our life. And it's in this moment that I'm reminded of how important it is for us to work together. I want us to take us back, though. This is a letter that was written February 17th of 1913. And it was written from the president of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Alpha Kappa Alpha is the longest, oldest African-American sorority in the country, founded in 1908, and founded upon the principles of integrity and sisterhood, but also to be socially active. And at that point in time, in 1913, the women's movement was in full swing. And these college-educated women wanted to participate in the women's suffrage parade. And as they sought the leadership to let those members know that they were active, they are at Howard University, where the organization was founded, that they too wanted to be a part of this movement as Black women, as college-educated women. They were told that if they were going to march in the women's suffrage parade as Black women, they would have to march in the back. And so this profound group of women who had already beaten a number of odds by, in the year 1913, being Black, who were college educated and dedicated to moving social justice actions in their own country, to be told that they would have to stand in the back if they were to even begin to push towards that effort of equity and justice for women. Not just saying Black women, for women, period, recognizing that they were women. The president wrote a letter to the women's suffrage movement. And that letter is what you see here today. And it basically says that we are women just like you, and that you should assign us to a more desirable section in the college women, for college women, but more importantly, that there's so many noted women that would be there and would be a part. It would be a disservice to assume that they should be in the back because of their color. I share this photo evidence, this letter, because it is the epitome of what Black and brown people have felt in this country for years. And that is, as we are trying to come to a place of racial equity, of racial justice, we are always delayed, denied, and told to stand in the back. And that's what makes this moment in time so pivotal, because for a space we are now seeing that this is no longer going to be the norm. I've shared, what you're seeing now is some slides that are from North Carolina. 1982 in North Carolina, you had an environmental justice movement. In fact, one of the first environmental justice movements that really talked about the issues that were happening in Black and brown community. And as we move from 1913 to now 1982, in North Carolina, you see images of Black people who were sitting and laying in the street. In Warren County, North Carolina, 6,000 truckloads of PCB were making its way into this predominantly Black community. You see, the state had decided that these materials had to go into a landfill somewhere, and the place that they chose was a Black town. And so the members of that community, they marched, they protested. There were over 500 people that were arrested. They laid into the street to push back against environmental injustices coming into their community. So this is not new to us. I've heard so many people talk about the fact that they're seeing a new day when it comes to protests and environmentalism and protest and police brutality and the groups that are involved. And the point that I show is that this is not new to Black folks. We've been doing this for a long time. And while many people are familiar with the scenes of Rosa Parks and the Selma March and the bus boycotts and Martin Luther King and Memphis, what you don't often see are the environmental justice protests that took place right alongside all others. Because social injustice and social inaction has hit Black and brown communities across this country for years simultaneously. So it's very difficult to separate one issue from another when we're hit on all sides by all of the issues at the same time. When I look at the images today in June 2020, this month alone, we see I Can't Breathe, and we see different people who are standing alongside as allies. We see white women who are lined up to protect Black protesters. We see people from diverse backgrounds on beaches. We see healthcare workers who are saying that I stand with you. And to me, one of the most fascinating ones was when I saw Amish and then the Wiccan standing and protesting the same thing. It certainly sent a message that maybe, just maybe, the world is waking up and realizing that we have a major problem that we have to address. But it still comes back to this place of us having to create this trust with one another. Because you have to understand that the words "I can't breathe" mean so much more to Black and brown communities. It's so deeper, it hits in such a deeper place. And the reason is because when we think of "I can't breathe," we think of it in a sense of not just the police kneeling on our neck, but it's also the air pollution that is surrounding our homes. It is the pollution that we live and have to drive in because we live on the front lines and right next door to polluting sources. It is the choking of economic disparities that have infiltrated our communities for generations. So the idea of not being able to breathe has so much meaning to communities of color that we have to step back and we have to say to ourselves, we see all of this that's happening. Is it real? And will it stand? And I think that's the important point that we have to think through when we're talking about allies and allyship and what does that mean? So I want to start at the beginning. What is equality? What is equity? What is justice? Because these are terms that we toss around over and over and over again, but don't really understand that they're not exactly interchangeable. They mean different things, and we have to respect the meaning of the word to understand how it is applicable to communities of color, but also to culturally competent solutions. So equity, the box that you see, it's on my far left of the screen, it's the assumption that everyone is going to benefit from the same type of support, that is equal treatment, that if I give everybody the same amount of money, if I give every school system the same access to books, if I give every community the same access to sustainable roadways, then everybody's going to be the same. But you can clearly see from the picture that everybody is not the same from the beginning. So you can give every person the exact same thing, but they're not going to still be able to see the game, or they're not going to be able to receive the same type of response and benefit. Now, equity is when everybody gets the support that they need. Now that's the support that people talk about when you talk about affirmative action. It's producing equity. It's giving one group maybe more than another so that everybody is on the same level playing field. That's equity. But now let's talk about this other box over here. It's called justice. I'm sorry, let me go back here. Justice is when everybody can see and you don't need any support or any accommodations at all. It is completely eradicating what was causing the actual inequality. It's addressing that and tearing down those systematic barriers. That's the place that we are today. And that's where we see so much of our action coming around calls for justice, calls for removing structural racism, eradicating racial inequality. It is not handing out everybody the same slice of bread so that we can all eat. It is removing the barrier to actually get the bread in the first place. And when we think about and understand justice in this respect, we can now understand why there is such a passionate plea to remove the structures that have inhibited communities for so many years. I think about this when I think about climate action and working in climate, and how so often we toss around these solutions that everyone should be able to do. Everybody can get around not using plastic bags because plastic bags are wrong. And I will tell you, I am definitely in that group of people who I have my own bags that I carry with me to the grocery store, and we don't use very many plastic bags in my house at all. But when I go to a Black neighborhood and I talk about plastic bags, I often come up, and I think that this next slide is the epitome of what I hear all the time. And it is this: Black people are the biggest recyclers of plastic bags. So when you see a turtle choking, don't look at us, because all of our plastic bags are in the cabinet and under the sink. And if you think I'm telling a story, this is like real live, what looks like under, I know, a lot of people's sink in Black houses and Black communities all over the country. Why? Because we use these bags for everything. It can be used for an extra garbage bag. It can be used for a hair conditioning cap. It can be used to take your lunch. The point is that we are one of the most resourceful people. And so using or saying something as simple as, you know what, let's just stop using all the plastic bag, it feels different in a Black community because we're saying we've been doing some of these things the entire time. It's one of the things that I saw when working at EPA. We would work with communities and communities of color, and we would have majority white organizations say, I want to go and do something in the Black community. Maybe we can go and plant a garden. And the churches in the Black community would look at me and say, well, we've been planting gardens for years. We know how to do this. We're the ones who taught white communities how to do it. So this lack of cultural understanding of what's important to each of us prohibits us from coming up with solutions that we can all get behind. It comes to listening to one another. And I think that is one of the things that not only we have to learn how to do better, we have to learn how to do it quickly. The reason I say we have to learn how to do it quickly is because in the midst of COVID, which has completely unveiled all of the different things that have happened in our community when it comes to racial injustices. It has pulled the cover off of racial inequities across our country. And people all of a sudden are saying, oh my God, we did not know what was going on. You'll learn very quickly, I love memes. This is the one that I think of all the time, Stairs and Ancestor, because our ancestors, we have all been saying for the longest time, this is not new to us. This is not new that Black and brown people have been the ones who are on the front lines as the janitors, as the hotel attendants. It was not new to us when we saw states opening back up quickly when they realized who was dying. And think about that for a moment. When the state of Georgia reopened officially as a response to COVID, allowing people to come back into the workplace, they immediately declared that nail salons, hair salons, barbershops, tattoo parlors, and bowling alleys were considered essential services. I don't know about you, but I haven't been to a bowling alley as an essential service in my lifetime. It was the very idea of almost testing out or using Black and brown people as testing subjects to find out how this virus was going to hit the public. And the important relationship that has to climate is because we can determine climate responses based upon how our government leaders are responding to the COVID crisis. The same way and the same communities, or if you were listening in the other session, the sacrifice zones that Jane Fonda talked about are the same things we're seeing in what will in COVID response and will be the same things in climate response. We mentioned it, but I wanted to show this statistic. Hispanic, Latino, and Black Americans are more likely to be alarmed or concerned about global warming than whites. And it was said in the previous session, but we didn't really see this, because when you really look at it, it goes against every stereotype that you think about and you know. If you even put in the words, what does an environmentalist look like? What does a climate justice advocate look like? You're always going to come up with images of white people who are hugging trees. You come up with images that are very singular, one person in a slide, one person out in a field. You don't come up with images of community, which are what Black and brown communities are built upon. The togetherness, the community, the circular environment. These are not images that are associated with environmentalism. But the statistics show us quite differently. When asked about climate concerns, global warming, it is Black and brown communities that are the most concerned about it. For one, we have been in the space of the environment, either working, living, or in some way existing as a part of our culture. We are not only outside, we are groups of people and constituency bases that are more likely than not to be harmed by things like extreme heat, hurricane, flood, wildfire. It is the systematic racism that has placed our communities into locations geographically across this country that make us more susceptible. So it's not by happenstance that the majority of African Americans live in the southeast part of the country. You had more enslaved Africans that were in this part of the country, and this was the part of the country where you had more of a trade with enslavement, and you had people who stayed in this part of the country. This is also called the Sunshine part of the country. I know California is the Sunshine State, but the Sunshine Quarter, where you have a lot of auto manufacturers that have relocated from the Northeast into the Southeast, are due to not only labor, but also the continuity of transportation and the access to communities of color where they can hire workers cheaper. And all of these things have to do with how climate is impacting our communities. The next thing to know is that in the US, it's lower income women and the young who are more concerned about climate change. And we see this in statistics. You see that 51% of women think that global climate change is a serious problem and that it's harming people now. And then when you just look to see the amount of money that people make, the poverty rate, and who they are and where they are, you can clearly see that it's poor people who know and are experiencing and are feeling the impacts of climate. And that is directly correlated to our experiences and our responses. Now, this is very important right now. And the reason it is so important right now is because if we do not get past the stereotypes of thinking that Black and brown people are not concerned about climate, we don't get to the important part of engaging Black and brown people around climate issues. And we don't get to the important part of realizing that they are vital to getting sound climate policy changed. Right now in the United States, we are under a process of voter suppression in key areas of Black and brown voters. This is not happenstance. The reasons you see that with respect to climate policy are the very slides that we're showing you right now. If you can suppress the vote of Black and brown people, you will not have the people to go to the polls to elect people and officials to change and shift climate policy. And so just by suppressing the vote, just by keeping those people at home and away from the polling place, you automatically keep people away from putting what they feel is important to them at the top of the importance for our country. We're seeing it happen all over the place. We're seeing it happen in Georgia with these recent elections. We're seeing it take place across the Mideast corridor. We're seeing places that are changing their access to voting, and it goes directly against everything that we know about who is concerned about climate change. There's another layer of this, because of our communication and us not talking to each other, we are not understanding that while there are a number of issues that are burdening Black and brown communities right now, all of them are related to climate in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I am a Black mother who is extremely concerned about my son, about my husband, about them going in and out, police brutality, what I see on television, but I also know that heat is being increased across our globe as a result of global warming. So this slide you're seeing is a side of my husband and my son. And today is Father's Day, and it is special because this picture is special to me, not only because these are two loves of my life, but I think we don't ever see Black people in nature as much as we need to. We don't see these images populated on Google. We don't see these images on the news. We don't see ourselves. And so therefore, since we don't see ourselves as often as we see others, we think we don't exist in these spaces. But I know that we do. And it's important for us to understand what we look like, what we feel like when we're in these spaces, and share this with one another, because this is what we're trying to protect. I am a Christian of Christian faith and have been so all of my life. And when I think about climate in this moment, this story comes to mind to me. It's the story of Esther. It is the story of another woman who actually was hiding who she was in order to receive the benefits of being in the king's favor. And as the story goes on, she comes to a point where if she does not really fulfill and recognize who she is, and if she doesn't speak up, then she is at risk of not only all of her people perishing, but her along with it. And the scripture that I love and I think about at this moment is Esther 4:14, which is, "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position at such a time as this." And that's why I titled this "For Such a Time as This." Black and brown people are being seen in a way that we have never been seen before in my lifetime. And we are being given a platform to speak on issues that are near and dear to us from our ancestors. And when I think about the fact that I am a survivor, my very essence and being in this space today is a result of somebody surviving the transatlantic slave trade, surviving slavery, surviving the civil rights movement, surviving to be here. What if it is for such a time as this that I am in this space and I have to make a choice to be silent or to be a part of the conversation that brings us to a solution? I'm determined to be a part of that place. I believe that that's the space that Black and brown people have found themselves today, and why it is so important for white people to not only listen and listen intently and deeply, but to assist in making sure that we can do the work we need to do at this time. And so with that, I'm going to now turn it back over. I know there are resources that have been shared in the Resource Center, and these are some of the resources, but I'm looking forward to this conversation. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, Dekila.
So much, Heather and Kritee. That was so enriching and moving. I think, and it was so sobering, because I think there's a tendency for us to shut down when we get information that overwhelms us. But the way both of you carried it and explained it was just so beautiful that we could stay with the suffering and stay with the pain. So first of all, thank you. That was brilliant. I have been collecting questions that are coming in live, so I might jump in and out a little bit. But I think one question that maybe we could all start with, because I think that might help us feel more lighter when we deal with such darkness and so much suffering, is so that question actually comes from me, to be honest. And the question is, what is, and it's a question for both of you, what is your source of resilience?
Do you want me, Kritee, you want me to start?
Please go ahead, right on.
Yeah, you know, my source of resilience is, it's that that place that I go to when I think about my ancestors and my history. My presence is resilience in action, because had not my forefathers and foremothers been resilient and dealt with the trauma and the pain and the travesty that they dealt with in every single stage of life, then I would not be here. I do a disservice to my lineage when I don't recognize how powerful their resistance has been to my existence. I traveled to Senegal and I went to one of the slave castles that was on the coast, and I stood, at the door of no return, and it was a sobering moment for me. But before I got there, you take a boat ride to get to the castle. And before I got there, I was sitting on this boat and I could feel the energy of those who had not made it. And to feel the energy then of standing in that space of those who had gone through that door, not knowing what would happen on the other side, not knowing what they would get, what would happen to them when they got on those ships. To feel that energy and to know that I had come back to that space, bringing full circle, it is only way I can say it is a bulletproof resilience, because I know that the best of that has gone through those bloodlines and now exists in me. How dare I not push forward and be their prayers answered? And I pass that on to my children to say the same thing. So when I think of resiliency in that way, it's not just a present moment feeling. It's not just what I'm planning for the future. It is what has taken generations to build to where we are right now. And I think as we think about it in that way, then it becomes more holistic, because it's more than just me.
Oh, that was beautiful, Heather. And it takes me to this essay I was reading by Janine Canty, who is a professor at Naropa University, about slave castles and how women were welcomed back after, you see, before women, African American, Black women were shipped, there was a hierarchy of people who abused and basically raped them. The person who owned the slave castle, the soldiers, and then maybe the Black men themselves. And that I related to what gives me resilience. As women would come in and go from one trauma to another, right? The women who were waiting at the bottommost tier of these slave castles would be rocking and singing and shaking out the belonging made them resilient, and doing the somatic work of shaking out that trauma from the body. And I happen to find these practices through introduction to Joanna Macy, who will be with us later today. And my moment of finding grief practices and community was the moment where my spiritual life as a Zen priest got integrated with my life as a climate scientist. Otherwise, these were like two parallel tracks not talking to each other. Yeah. And so thank you, Dekila, for that question. It's absolutely crucial. And Jane Fonda was talking about the same thing. When we need to allow these facts to hit our gut, but it doesn't happen unless we have the container that can allow us to hold it. And I wouldn't repeat the ancestors, like the resilience of my mother and my aunts, my masis, as we call them in India. once you connect with the thread of belonging, the deep time opens up, and future beings and ancestors both guide us.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. It feels like an incredible moment right now, full of promise. We have a global civil rights uprising over 70 countries, all the states in the US. I think I would like to weave two questions that have come up. One is, how does the current movement, this uprising, differ from past movements? Like, what do we see? And the other is, what do we, as three women of color actually right here, what is the message or the lesson that we want our white allies and non-allies to understand? The global community, allies in the global community, what do we want them to take away from the experience of 2020 and what is happening right now?
Yeah, you're right. It feels different. It completely feels more. It feels full. And when I say full, I mean we have read in history these movements and these times when people have come together around a singular issue, be it voting rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights. We've read about and had these moments in time where there have been people who've come together, but we've never, and again, in my lifetime, seen or felt a movement where the allyship and it appears that the push to completely eradicate these systems is actually taking hold. Now, I want to clarify one thing, because I said it, I know it feels different. My father is a retired civil rights attorney. He came to Mississippi as a part of the voters' rights movement, and did work with some of the most amazing civil rights leaders. And I know he would say to me right now, this ain't new, Heather. This ain't new. And I can hear him saying that in my head right now. Remember your history. This is not new. The idea of a movement is not new. Black people have been pushing to have social justice reform since 1619, since we got here. But this feeling now, I think, is full of hope and promise from young people who have come to a space where they are recognizing that if we don't shift and change right now, then they don't have any future. That this is a different kind of group of people and young people. I've seen so many. One of my favorite signs is one that says, we are not our ancestors, we will mess you up. And that's not exactly the language that they use, but just the activism and the energy and passion is there. And we are seeing business and industry shift in a way that we have not before. Now, part of that, I think, is completely and totally based upon money. But part of it, there is some good, because there are now people who are in some places in charge of some of these organizations that have come up like I did, came up under parents who demanded an understanding of justice and that it be implemented in our lives. So I think that is there as well. Kritee, I'll let you go ahead and answer, because I'm trying to think, Dekila, what was the second part of your question? I got so wrapped up in the first part.
Oh, totally happy to take that on. I think the second question was what message we can have as women of color here in this panel. I think I said it in my presentation. This is the time to use the power of belonging to cut through our racial trauma in all bodies. White people also have racial trauma. And I think once we do it, people of color all over the world have been asking for it, if not in words and just being who they are and what they are experiencing. But it's time for white people to hear this, that they need to do their own trauma work, grief work, rage work, and show up, because our joint survival survival of black children, white children, brown children, yellow children, pink children, whatever color we might identify, depends on us coming together. The left, in United States, the left is terribly divided. We have a group of people who don't want to see race because they think race divides us. And what I am saying here is, if we are willing to look at our internalized racism, right, as well as racism we have towards people of color, we are going to power our movement, and nothing can stop us from getting to climate sanity.
Yeah.
So that's where I am today. We need to see white supremacy as the engine of climate crisis. We got to face it in our bodies. And we can only do it with the power of belonging.
Yeah. You made me think exactly, you're exactly right about how do we get there, right? What is it, the message? Because we have to work together, and that's hard. This is part of the very difficult work that we have to do. It's been repeated over and over and over again. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I don't know how many people have actually run a marathon. I have run a marathon before. You get to a place where you hit a wall, and it is almost a physical feeling where you come to this space and you feel like if you take another step, you are going to completely melt into the pavement, and someone will have to come and scrape you up and put you back together again. And it doesn't matter how long you run or how often you run, you're going to come to this place where your mind has to take over and convince your body that it actually can continue going despite the fact that it feels that it cannot. And so when I think of this analogy from having lived that experience, I don't think people quite understand when we're saying as Black people, we need to trust that you're in here with us for the long haul, because this is a marathon and we're going to come to a wall. We're going to come to some places where it is going to be really hard to push past and to move forward. We've been there, so we know what it feels like to go past that wall and keep running and get that second win. But we're surrounded now by new friends and allies who've never been there before. So if you're a runner, right now we're in the first 5K. We're in that first 3-mile stretch, and everybody's feeling good. Your limbs are still, cozy. You go to the rest stops, they still got water and Gatorade, and you're smiling and you're taking pictures. But we're getting ready to go into the next part, and that's when it's going to start to get hard. The crowds are going to go away. There are not going to be as many people around, and you're going to feel like you're going to slow down. And I see people right now who are saying, it's too much. I've been overloaded with all of this race stuff, and they can go back to how they were before. Black folks can't go back. And we've got to know that we can trust our allies to stay in here with us. So the thing I want white people, white women to know is this means you need some stick-to-itness. This is not a movement where you can jump in and out, that you've got to be committed in all spaces, in all levels. And as we do that and make that commitment together, then we're going to see some real change in action. But we got to trust you. You got to hang in there.
Dekila, can I jump in? Because I just saw a chat pop in and it said we might be alienating people by posing climate crisis as a white supremacy issue. And I want to take it head on. And Heather, do you want to go first or should I?
I have no filter. It is. And this is, again, part of the work that we have to do. It's easy to get defensive. It is easy to say, oh, no, it's not me. Oh, no, it's not this. It's not this. It is. The climate crisis, when you really look at it, is built upon the foundations of white supremacy. It's built upon the structures of white supremacy. It is built upon the very foundations of who gets access to water, when, and where. Flint would not have happened as an environmental justice issue if it was not for racial structural. Katrina, as an extreme weather event and hurricane, would not have had the devastation that it had it not been for a white supremacist structure that allowed it to take place. No, the hurricane itself But the structure that was in place, the structure that told sheriff's departments to stand on bridges and not allow Black and brown people to cross over into safety, these are the structural things that are racism and are underlying, as Christiana said, they're underlying into the climate crisis itself. So as we see these waves coming in, I think she described it so beautifully, you got to understand that the thing that's under the very bottom of this is racism. And we have to call it what it is. And as we break it down and begin to rebuild and understand, it's not to step on anybody's toes. It's okay. We will heal through this together, but you got to call it what it is.
And I just want to add, you know, this is not about individual people. White supremacy is different from white supremacists, right? Who are shouting around with guns and literally scaring Black people off as we are marching. And I'm saying it again, you know, we say at the spiritual level, Buddhists love to say this, the cause of all of our problems is our sense of separation from each other and sense of separation from nature. If only we felt one with the tree, the way Stephanie Kaza was talking about in the morning, how would you have the heart to cut a tree if you felt the oneness? Fine. The cause of our problems is sense of separation at a spiritual level. Got it. Done. But at a cultural level, at a level of practices, you know how our mother cooks the food in a certain way and it smells a certain way? In terms of our culture, in terms of our habits, okay? I see culture as habits. The habit of cutting tree, of not valuing tree, of valuing people who have lived in harmony with the tree or ecosystems, that comes from white supremacy, because white people at some point, because of their own trauma, lost in touch, got lost their connection with community and nature. Dekila, sorry, we have been
I know,
going
Dekila,
on.
we've sort of taken over your whole question here.
I think I want to add one thing here, because Heather talked about systems and Kritee is talking about Buddhism. And as a social scientist, I want to say that if you drew a Venn diagram between people's opinions on climate change and white supremacy, it's perfectly aligned. There are 3 different studies that have been carried out in Norway, in Europe, and now in the US that show that climate denialism and white supremacist thinking are perfectly aligned. In fact, it's the white supremacists that are taking control of religious institutions to drive climate denialism. So there are 3 different layers of saying that it's one and the same thing. So, okay, I'm gonna pull back.
No, it's the work that we have to do, right? It's the reason we're having these conversations. These are the uncomfortable conversations that we have to engage in, because we've been running from them for so long. And us running from us having these conversations pushes us further down the line in that time stamp that we've got. You know, the IPCC report is not giving us more time, it's giving us less time. And us not having these conversations is what puts us in a more, it puts us in a really dangerous position. But I want to just sort of address this idea that when we talk about even alienating or separating, or even the choice, because it becomes a choice. If I say that, you know, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like what you're saying, I'm saying that I have a choice to now not include myself in whatever is the recovery or healing. And what Black people have been saying, and Black people in America, is that we never had that choice. We don't have a choice to be alienated from or with, or we've never had that choice. And so here we are at this very poignant period of time where we are trusting of allies that we are going forward together, that the actual creators of the structural systems that have impacted our lives and families for generations that, all right, let's see how we can work this out together. It is again relying on the fact that you're not going to alienate me, that you're not going to decide that, you know what, I don't like what you said today, so I'm going to go back to the things I was doing yesterday. No, we're trusting that you're going to stick it in here with us, and you're going to figure out what things we like, what things we don't like. Because for me personally, I want to make sure that I'm raising my children and that I'm putting them in a position that they are solving problems in a way that looks at humanity together, recognizing what justice is, but also looking forward to this collective humanity that we must move forward together. We cannot escape each other. They have not started putting houses on Mars yet, and even if they did, I don't think I would be on their first ship going there. So I got to figure out how to make it happen on this planet with all of you. That's what we have to do.
And we are totally calling upon everyone. You know, the future of my nieces and nephews in India depends on all of you.
Yes.
All of you.
We have 2 more minutes, so I'm going to quickly throw one last question in there, which is, if people are thinking about action for the first time, sparked from the conversation that the 2 of you are having, 3 of us are having, what is your suggestion that a listener could do after this event and after today is over?
So mine is that this is your first action. You're actually in an action right now because you're listening and you're aware. You're connected, obviously, because you're online and you're connecting to these different voices. So my next step would be to stay a part of this collective conversation, identifying these resources that you can link into and read online. If you are in the United States, plead with you to make sure that not only are you registered to vote, but that you are actively voting, that you are aware of what's happening, and that you are calling on other people to make sure that they have access to vote. You can do that from the comfort of your own home, texting friends and neighbors, and you can send letters to members of Congress, to your mayor, to your state senator, whoever. Get on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. TikTok was one of probably the most profound resources over the past 72 hours, because apparently they made a huge difference in this rally that took place yesterday, and I'll leave it at that. But there are so many ways to be socially active on social justice right from your own home that you can find a ton of things to do. Those are just my beginnings. Also, you can follow us at Clean Air Moms. You can follow me at Heather McTeer. We're all online everywhere, so get connected.
Everything Heather said, and please find your spiritual or non-spiritual, non-religious friends. Share these videos with them, share the articles with them. There is so much power in friendship and belonging. My suggestion would be don't try to do it by yourself. Do it with a group. Accountability is missing in white culture. People of color are bound to each other and they help each other with trauma, grief, but they keep that. The accountability of our systems has helped us be resilient and keep taking actions.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So Noah's just going to conclude. I'm sitting here just filled with gratitude, and also for you speaking this perspective on white supremacy, which is so important to bring to surface at this time. So Noah, if you would just move into conclusion, and are you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you.
Okay.
I need to pick my jaw up off the floor. I'm just so blasted open. It's been so inspiring and wonderful. And we're only 2/3 of the way through today. So we will have a time for an out breath in about 30 minutes, 28 minutes. We'll have Stephanie Kaza doing a guided meditation from 5:30 to 6:30. And then after that, at 7:30, after a break for dinner, we will have Joanna Macy and Rebecca Solnit at 7:30, A Wiser, Braver World. And then concluding with Roshi Joan and Christina Figueres. So yes.
And other panelists.
And everybody will be on to conclude. So thank you so much for joining. And if you haven't donated yet for these amazing causes, which are like everything that's needed, put your money where your heart is and join me. Thank you. And we'll see you in half an hour.